always in the back of your mind. When everything is dark, still something shines. On a chilly afternoon, you drew the blank.
One of our guest speakers has another engagement, so we're going to have her speak first and then excuse her so that she can fulfill her other obligation. So, on behalf of the Ezra T. Clark Family Organization, I welcome each and every one of you. My name is David Clark. I currently am the president of this family organization, Carol Clark. I met Carol in 2004. As you know, our family conducted a bus trip that was a most memorable experience. I had an opportunity to be a part of the planning of that and then participated in that. And we'll have a couple of references to that later. But Carol was our featured speaker in a most memorable meeting that we held in the upper room of the Red Brick Store. I look forward to her remarks as she speaks of one of our not direct ancestors, but speaking about the sister of Ezra T. Clark, Laura Clark Phelps. Carol Clark.
Thank you. I hope it's all right if I stay seated so I have a little bit more ease in turning these papers. I appreciate very much the opportunity to be here. David is so kind to invite me to come. I am descended from Norman W., the son of Edward F., the son of Edward B., the son of Ezra T. And you can all do that, can't you? You're all family, so hope that places me in bed. I worked on a chapter on Laura Clark Phelps for a book that the church is doing. The church is going to publish a series called Women of the Restoration. The first volume of that book is supposed to come out at Christmas time, and it is about women who were born before 1820. And so I submitted a proposal to write a chapter about Laura. Our cousins, Anne Clark Pingree and Marjean Clark Wilcox, and I get together once a month, and we talk about the Clarks, and we rejoice in our heritage. And so we had talked about this chapter, and I'm the one who actually wrote it. So I just wanted to share a little bit about this remarkable woman. I think that Laura Clark Phelps really embodies faith, and she certainly inspires mine. So Laura was born in Connecticut in 1807. She's a daughter of Timothy Baldwin and Polly Keeler Clark. She is the older sister of our Ezra T. So I'm just going to give you highlights of this chapter in the interest of time. But Laura and her husband, Morris Phelps, joined the church in August of 1831. They were baptized in the DuPage River in Cook County, Illinois. At the same time, her sister Rhoda Cooper and her husband John Rouse were baptized. So Clarks are early on in the church. They tied their fortunes and their faith to the church and followed the saints as they gathered to Jackson County, and they arrived there in the cold March of 1832. This family lore says that her third daughter, born in Independence shortly after their arrival, was the first girl born in Independence County. I'm going to say it was true, but in Independence, Missouri. So the Phelps then were driven with the rest of the saints to Clay County, Missouri in the winter of 1833, and they rented a farm. And their daughter, Mary Ann, wrote an interesting life history and talked about some of her early days. And she said, the prophet Joseph came and preached at our house. Well, at our house, he put me on his knee and blessed me, and I knew him ever afterward, and he always remembered me. So Clarks had that very close association with significant leaders in this dispensation. Morris wrote that they rented a farm. He said Zion's camp came, cholera came, and he left his family in the fall of 1833 1934 and went on a mission. So Laura had 3 small children without means of support, and she taught school and acted as a midwife to make ends meet. He went on his mission to Illinois, built up some branches of the church there, and baptized a number of the Clark family, who then moved and were a great help to Laura later. So Morris and Laura were driven by the mob to Far West, and they had a little peaceful season there, which is kind of comforting to know because she had so little peace in her adult life. Let me tell you a couple of stories of things that happened to them while they lived in Far West. So one day, Laura saw the prophet Joseph and his brother Hiram racing toward her home, a mob hot on their heels. So a family storyteller tells the tale that the prophet said, "Sister Phelps, hide us quickly." Well, she had a curtain that she kept closed behind in this small home. And so she had these 2 brethren duck behind that, and she hid them there. And then the story continues. Praying, she met the mob. The leader said, "Where are they? Where are they? We know they are here. We saw them come." Calmly, with no apparent concern, she answered, "No, gentlemen, they are not here, but you are welcome to look all you want." So they did a hasty look and left. I like this story. I don't think they're going to put this in the book, but really, I'm telling you, this family storyteller continues. The prophet Joseph came out. Joseph put his hands on her shoulders and said, "Sister Laura, there are black lies and white lies," and that certainly was a white one that came from your lips. Well, persecution escalated. As you know, she had more confrontations with the mobbers. 2 quick stories about that. One is a tale that the mob came into the yard of her home. They shot the animals. And when Harriet, her young daughter, came out to try to protect her pet pig, they were going to shoot her. They threatened to do so. Laura ran out and said, "Shoot all the animals you desire, but leave my little girl alone." On another occasion, her daughter Marianne wrote that the mobbers would come into her yard. She talks about shooting the animals. Mother had her house full of women and children in the meanwhile, who had been driven from their homes by the enemy. These women wanted Mother to go into the woods to escape the mob, but she told them no, that if she had to die, she would die in her own home, so they decided to stay with her. Well, during the same time, 1837, Morris was thrown into jail in Richmond, the Richmond jail, with Parley P. Pratt and 4 others, at the same time that Joseph, Hiram, and 5 others went to Liberty Jail. So here is Laura again, with her husband gone, and their provisions and everything they had been destroyed. So it seems quite amazing to me that during this circumstance, really difficult time, she managed to visit her husband about every 2 weeks and taking provisions, because the food he had was so coarse as to often be inedible. Now, during one of her visits, Heber C. Kimball also came to the jail, and he wrote, "On our arrival at Richmond, I went directly to the prison to see Parley, but was prohibited by the guard, who said they would blow my brains out if I attempted to see him. In a few minutes, Sister Morris Phelps came to me in great agitation and invited me to leave forthwith, as Brother Pratt had told her that a large body of men had assembled with tar, feathers, and a rail, who swore they would tar and feather me and ride me out on the rail. They suspected I was the one who'd assisted Joseph and others to escape." Noteworthy, I think, is a few sentences more about that story that Heber C. Kimball penned in the Times and Seasons in her obituary. He said, "When my life was sought at Richmond and my brethren in prison had great anxiety on my account, she interceded with my pursuers, who were nearly 30 in number, and actually convinced them that I was another person altogether, and the pursuit was stopped." She is one tough cookie, don't you think? She wrote in a letter to her family that sadly, I don't think this letter is extant, but she wrote a letter that another family member recorded. She said, I left our home in Far West, drove my wagon all the way. She's with the Saints, obviously fleeing from Missouri. Turned over once with my children under the load, but hurt them but little. I can safely say this day, I am not sorry I ever joined this church. We have to be tried like gold, 7 times tried. Well, she followed her father to Quincy, Illinois. And as you know, my great-great-grandfather, Ezra T., who's Laura's younger brother, also settled there in the Montrose area. And so she had to find a place to live. So here she is with these kids, and her husband's still in jail. So some people told her that she could live in an old house, very run down. It was in the middle of a field. But they didn't think it was fit because they'd been using it to stable horses. So she looked at the place, decided it was better than the out of doors. It's getting very hot. She unpacks the cupboards from the loft, dusts them off, shovels the manure out, whitewash the place, wash the floor, and moved in. That's what her daughter wrote. So Morris was coming to trial. Laura was determined to go see him. So her brother, John Wesley Clark, joined her on this journey of 150 miles on horseback. So they arrived there to find Orson Pratt, Harley's brother, had also come for the trial. Now, Harley P. Pratt writes quite a bit about what goes on during this episode. Previous to their arrival, he writes, the Lord had shown me in a vision of the night the manner and means of escape. Sister Phelps had the same thing shown to her in a vision previous to her arrival. So apparently, both of these folks have had this inspiration about how these men can get out of jail rather than being tried. So they made a plan, and fortunately detailed by Parley P. Pratt. So Orson Pratt and John Clark came, and Sister Phelps planned to stay. Her plan was, Laura Phelps' plan was, part of the plan was that she was going to stay at the jail, and because she had a horse, she'd come on horseback, so that gave them another horse. So John had a horse, Orson had a horse, and there was Laura's horse, and there were 3 men who needed to escape. So Laura is staying, she's renting space in this home where the jailers lived, which is above the jail, so as to not create any suspicion. So they worked this plan. They have a plan. It's just like watching a cowboy movie to read this thing. I mean, the True Grit has nothing on this story. So they have a plan. Who's to do what when the jailer comes on the 4th of July, and they figure it's a good day to try to escape. And so then Laura's apparently sitting in the adjoining room. According to her daughter Marianne's account, Laura is sitting in the kitchen during this escape. And pretty soon, Marianne reports, Laura could hear steps and a rumbling noise, heard the jailer call out. He said his wife rushed up the stairs to where he was, and the wife was a large woman. Now, here's how Marianne tells this story. The jailer had Father clinched, but Father jumped down 2 pairs of stairs, 6 steps each, and with the jailer's wife hanging onto one of his arms. He would get rid of her when he jumped, but he would clinch him again when she reached him. Mother said she thought she could pray if she could do nothing else. She thought she was whispering a prayer, but they said she hollered just as loud as her voice would let her. And she said, O thou God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, deliver thy servant. Father said he felt as strong as a giant when he heard those words. He just pushed the jailer and his wife off as if they were babies and cleared himself. Well, he escaped. Laura is left in the jail, as the men have left. Orson and John are out in the woods where the men were to come, and they get them on the horses and send them off, and then Orson and John fall back into the woods and make their way on foot. toward Quincy. Laura is still in the jail. So, here we have it. Mary Ann reports, the jailer called her everything and told her to be gone out of his sight. She told him to get her shawl and bonnet, and she would leave. He told her to go upstairs and get them, but she said no, for them to bring them to her, as she knew the windows were open up there, and she thought they might throw her out of one. So, Parley P. Pratt also recorded in his account of this whole story. They threatened her with instant death and finally turned her out of doors in the dusk of the evening and in the midst of a mob who had gathered in great numbers around the prison and raging like so many tigers disappointed of their prey. So here's this poor woman. Finally, a young boy surnamed Richardson who had watched this, he'd run home in tears to his parents, and his parents came back to see what was going on, and upon hearing his story, and apparently, according to Mary Ann's account, that this man, Mr. Richardson, said to his wife, "You take this lady to our home. If her husband were the greatest murderer in the world, we could not see anyone in our town treated with such cruelty as this." They took her home. Meanwhile, people are gnashing their teeth at her, but she stayed with these people about 10 days. They found her horse, which they had gotten King Follett, who was the oldest member of the group trying to escape. They had caught him. He was unwell, as well as a bit older, and couldn't get away from the mobbers as the other two men did. So the horse came back in terrible condition. They found the side saddle that these men had disfigured, the mobbers, and thrown off. He fixed her saddle. He nursed his horse back to health. And after 10 days, she decided she needed to go try to find her husband. So she went with the mail boy. They arranged for her to travel with the mail boy. She was prepared to go alone, but they thought that was very unwise. So here they are. She's riding in the middle of nowhere with this boy. And finally, there's a point where she leaves the mail boy to make her way toward Quincy, where she thought her husband might be. And she's starting into the woods. And she said, she apparently told her daughter that this was the first time her courage failed her. She had such a lonesome, dismal feeling come over her. She did not know what would have cost her because it was getting dark. So amazingly, she sees a man coming to her on horseback toward her. Doesn't know who in the world this is. He gets close and she finds it's King Follett's son, who's ridden back to try to find out what had happened to her. Isn't that a remarkable meeting? She traveled with him to Quincy. Morris was there, and it took him a great deal of time to recover. He'd been 8 months in prison and 3 days without food or rest while he escaped. So the last sentences of Mary Ann's account about her mother are very tender. They're tender. She said that they moved to a town 20 miles from Nauvoo called Macedonia, where they located, and soon were all of our friends. We lived there about 1.5 years, which were the happiest of our lives. So this always just touches my heart. And my mother was taken sick and died, leaving her 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys, the baby 1.5 years old. We were all heartbroken, did not know how to manage without mother. She was buried in Nauvoo. She was quite young when she died, only 34 years old. But hard work and exposure had broken her health. Joseph Smith said she lived her life very fast and her salvation was sure. Now, Joseph wrote of her in his journal. Sister Laura Phelps, he wrote this, and it was the 2nd of, I forgot what month it is. It's in 1842, March, I believe. She was driven from Jackson County in 1833, was in the persecution in Missouri in 1838, went from Iowa to Missouri to assist in liberating her husband, and was left in the prison yard when he made his escape. willing to suffer all the abuses a savage horde could inflict upon her to set her companion free from the grasp of his murderous enemies. Her rest is glorious. In the obituary that I referenced earlier that Heber C. Kimball wrote, he said, "It is with deep regret that we announce the death of our highly esteemed and worthy sister Laura Phelps, who departed this life this February 2nd. She was one of the first to embrace the gospel, who manifested to the world that no sacrifice was too great for her to make for the cause which she had espoused." It's a tender and beautiful story of a remarkable woman. I have a great affection and regard for Laura Phillips. I'm genuinely honored to be related to a woman of such magnificent heroism, unflagging service, devotion to a family, and fidelity to the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, of which I bear testimony. In the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ, amen.
Or Judy, are you there? Judy, would you come up here? Judy is a direct descendant of Laura Clark Phelps. And in 2004, I said that we would have some mention of that bus trip. I became acquainted with Judy on that trip. And a monument, come on up and join me on stage. A part of the trip, we dedicated 2 monuments. We dedicated a monument to Laura Clark Phelps, and we dedicated a monument to Timothy Bolden Clark. And we'll have more to say about the latter. But I was a little taken back. This lady, she had Laura's headstone was covered with a napkin. And when she pulled it off, my heart just fell out of my chest, because I was tasked to choose the marker for Baldwin. And we both selected granite from Bury, Vermont, the exact same quarry. That, after surviving that shock and having a wonderful experience hearing Carol Clark speak of in the Red Brick story, I have a little bit of a devilish side to me, because I told Judy, I said that, would you scour amongst the Laura descendants? I want somebody who can run like a deer. Remember that conversation? Because the jail they broke out of was I didn't want to correct Carol, but it was actually the Columbia jail. They had been moved from Richmond as they separated all the prisoners. And while they were incarcerated in the Columbia jail and they made their break, it was the 4th of July. And earlier that morning, the prisoners waved their hats out the window saying, "Hooray for the 4th of July." And the passersby said, "Wow, those are patriotic fellows." And when they made the jailbreak, they had to run that distance along the main street. Today, on the 4th of July, there is a 5K race that commemorates the jailbreak. So I said to Carol, or I said to Judy, find me somebody who can run like a deer to be in that race, and then I will have a concession stand. She said, concession stand? I said, yeah, I want to sell t-shirts. We outran you then, we'll outrun you now. We welcome Judy to our Clark reunion. Even though it's the Ezra T. Clark family, she descends from Ezra's sister Laura. And she is the president of the Morris Phelps family. So we welcome you to our family reunion. Would you like to...
I'm somewhat of an interloper here today, but I love to come to your reunion. It's because of you. Is that Charles Hung? Anton's not here. He's in the hospital? Oh, it's because of Anton. Anton, he said to me way back, he said, there is no Morris Phelps and Laura Clark Phelps family organization. There never has been. As opposed to your family organization, which was organized, I guess, by your grandfather Ezra. So Anton said to me, you need to start this organization. And I said, well, I guess that some of the family will one of these days. And I think he said that to me 4 or 5 times, and I said, well, do you mean me? Do you mean I should do that? And he said, yes, I do. I mean, you should do that. So I did. And so after we went on this wonderful trip in 2004 and dedicated the monument to Laura, then I planned a trip for the Phelps descendants to do the same thing. And so we did go in 2007, and we celebrated Laura's 200th birthday in Nauvoo. And on the way, we went to Columbia, Missouri on the 4th of July, and my grandchildren, my grandsons, ran in that race. They didn't win, but they ran in that race. It was wonderful. They, like David said, to this day, they celebrate this event in Columbia, Missouri. They must have really thought it was something. We think it's something, but they must still think it's something. And so David and I just clicked, and we love each other. And Antone and Charles, I'm so glad I haven't seen Charles since 2004, but it is very nice to be here. And I'm like Carol, it's touching to hear her say how pleased she is to be related to Laura. I am Laura's great-great-granddaughter. She is my grandmother's grandmother. And I have heard these stories about Laura all my life from a very young age. My grandmother loved her grandmother, didn't know her, of course. She died before my grandmother was born. But my grandmother was always very proud of Laura's history and the events that took place in her life. And she passed that on to her children and grandchildren. And so I've always known about Laura and these wonderful things that she did. And I, like Carol, I'm very thankful to be descended from Laura. She's a wonderful example to all of us. And your grandfather, Ezra T. I, by the same token, love Ezra T. and I'm very impressed with him and his devotion to the gospel and devotion to his family and to the future generations that he exhibited by starting his family organization in his day, and I just think that is wonderful. So we have a lot of catching up to do to catch up with your family organization. We're a lot behind, but we're coming along. And as a matter of fact, we are having a family reunion next year in June, June 23rd, and it will be held in West Jordan, which is where I live. And we are honoring the military service of the Phelps and the Clark family from the War of 1812, of which we have ancestors both on the Phelps and the Clark side. And so we are honoring the military service of the Phelps and Clarks from the War of 1812 to the current time. So it'll be 1812 to 2012. That will be the 200th anniversary of the War of 1812. So if any of you are interested in coming to our reunion, we would love to have you. Thank you.
Charles, if you'd like to come up and situate yourself wherever you'd like. We'll try. I don't know that I've got long enough table, so. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Would you give Charles a hand and carefully move the table and things? I've got some housekeeping issues that I want to call your attention to. Since our last reunion, sorry, the ravages of age, I need these. Since our last reunion, we've had several notable things occur. We've had some deaths that have occurred since our last reunion. Two of our previous presidents of the Ezra T. Clark Family Organization have passed away. Dr. Russell Clark and his son, Dr. John Clark, died unexpectedly. Russell and John both attended our 2004 bus trip. And Uncle Russell, I've always called him Uncle Russell since I was a little boy, but he was magical because he was in his 102nd year while he was on that bus trip, and yet such a vibrant soul. And my sister recorded his testimony as he gave it in the upper room of the Red Brick Store where Carol spoke. Another cousin, Merlin Olson.
And Russell Clark's daughter is here today, Beverly.
Beverly, would you stand up, please? This is John's sister and Russell's daughter, Beverly Clark. Additionally, Merlin Olson, our cousin, passed away as a result of complications from mesothelioma. Merlin is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was honored by his alma mater, Utah State University, in which the football field was named in his honor, the field at the Romney Stadium, and a statue of Merlin Olson was dedicated. An additional notable achievement, Bishop Carolyn Tanner Irish, recently retired as the Episcopal Bishop of Utah. She is the daughter of Obert Clark Tanner, O.C. Tanner, and she still remains the chairman of the O.C. Tanner organization. Carolyn was named by the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce as one of the giant of the city in 2010. She is the first woman to be thus recognized. So it was a great honor to her, and certainly reflective upon the heritage that she bears. We have CDs that are available of genealogy. We have them, in fact, Ralph tells us that there's 4,000 additional data that's going to be added to the CD. We don't have CDs here today, but would like to tell you about them, and they can be ordered through the website and or by contacting David S. Clark. David, would you come up and talk about the second CD? It is a collection that's rather special. You want to, I'll just hand you the microphone.
Is Alicia Clark here?
Right here.
Oh, she's anyway, yeah. You know, there's some files, lots of files that the Soundies kept, lots of documents through the years, and all kinds of pictures. And Alicia, I believe it was you that scanned so many of those. This is Anton Clark's daughter, our past president, and that's made it possible to show these. We're putting them on a DVD. I was actually underestimated the volume of files to deal with, and so we're still working on that. There's so many different little files and clippings, and some you have to kind of get into, and maybe a little harder to read and understand, and others are these great journals that you've seen on the website or maybe heard about, John Alexander Clark and Ezra James Clark, their missions, two of the sons of Ezra team that died on their missions, serving the Lord. But Alicia knows more about it. She did that. Do you care to talk a little bit about the files you saw in there as you were scanning them? Just mention a little bit what's in there.
There's land titles, there's books, I skipped pictures, pretty much everything you could imagine is in there.
Yeah. So there's a big variety of things. Newspaper clippings, clear from back information from the colonial days of America with our George Clarks, and information about them, just various documents about them, all the way up to clippings of first members of the family that someone happened to put in there, so it's just kind of a variety. And also Andrew Clark shared a couple of very high quality scans of the family of Mary Stevenson and Ezra and Susan Leggett and Ezra, like we see over here with the artwork. Ezra T. and Susan Leggett picture is lying down. You can see the one of Mary Stevenson. So we have that. I'll be putting that on the DVD as well. So if any of you are interested in that,
What's your price? The price.
the price. Well, we talked about selling them for $18, and that's, if you'd like to order them, there's some sheets I put back there that you can sign up, and if there's room, I'll even put on Anton's book. As you may realize, his book has been on the website, and you can actually download that. But if there's enough room left over on the DVD, I'll stick that whole book on there as well. And there's a few photographs, not as many entries of various kinds of documents. You're welcome, when you order it, you can pay to our treasurer there, Richard, my brother, or if you could also just order it and we'll send you, along with it, a little note that says where to send your check, what address to get in. So I've had a lot of interesting things, just what I've seen so far, even the polygamy trials that some of our ancestors had to go through. Some of that was referenced in there. A lot of different little things, so it may be of interest to some of you.
He's being modest. This stuff is terrific. It gives you an idea and a flavor of our pioneer ancestry. Just to have the collection, and Alicia, we're so grateful for you taking the time. John and Clark had assembled a lot of this material, and it found its way in file cabinets to Anton, and she went through it and gleaned it and scanned it. So it is fabulous stuff. For those of you who buy electronic, yes, give her a round of applause. For those of you who buy books from Amazon or from the iTunes store, you're buying books at $15. This is more than a book for $18, so it's well worth it. Well worth it. Lastly,